Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me. My name is Daniel March, and I'm a Business Development Manager here at the Zyxel UK. So today we're going to be covering Wi-Fi 6. So this is one of the new standards which has been released, and it's like the next evolution of wireless connectivity. And as the title of the webinar shows, we're going to be taking advantage of some smooth, consistent, and fast connections with this next generation of wireless. So as you know, as things sort of increase, wireless connectivity is becoming key in most walks of life. So a typical average user checks their phone around 85 times a day. So that's equivalent to around sort of 5 hours. So as you can imagine, this will be checking emails. I mean, even with our Nebula platform, being able to run troubleshooting and make changes to networking on your phone. And then even outside of business, you've got people using all social media, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So as you can imagine, the wireless connectivity is increasing more and more as users have these applications that they need wireless connection for. That being said, the next generation of wireless, being the Wi-Fi 6 protocol, is there to improve things. So it is dictated that in 2020, 7 billion businesses will be connected to the internet. So this is a mixture of both wireless and cable devices, but 9 times out of 10, most businesses want full Wi-Fi connectivity. And also that means 20 billion devices will also be connected to the internet as well. So as you can see, it is massively improving the more and more technology evolves. And this is really into any sort of vertical. So this could be hospitals, restaurants and cafes, hospitality, education and retail. I've even worked on some projects with underground garages where they need uninterruptible wireless connection throughout to provide wireless updates to the car's software internally. So these are some of the more high-end cars. You've got your Teslas and things like that, which are more electronics nowadays than anything else. As I say, Wi-Fi 6 consistent and smooth in its data transfer. So what are some of the benefits that you get from Wi-Fi 6? So typically speaking, it's a 10 gigabit wireless network. So theoretically, you can get speeds of up to 9.6 gigabit per second, and that's over a Wi-Fi connection. So that's like 4 times the capacity and performance for larger networks than previous AC standards. And it still supports the dual band as well, so it can still operate on both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So some of the improvements which have actually been made to it is the ability of doing 8x8 multi-user MIMO. So this is a way of being able to transmit data to multiple users at any one time. Now, typically speaking, it only used to work on the downlink, but now with the improvements, it's now allowing you to do it on the uplink as well, because obviously people are uploading more and more as time goes by. OFDMA, which I deem the most important feature within Wi-Fi 6, is a form of modulation and how it actually deals with each user's data. Each user gets allocated like a timing slot. So one user will get given it, the next user will get given it, etc. What OFDMA can do is actually it can split them timing zones up for multiple users. And I've got a slide that can show that in a bit more of a visual representation. So the 1024 QAM is a form of modulation. So when a wireless device is connected to an access point, it does what's called modulation. So this is the form of being able to transmit data at a higher rate. The lower the modulation, the less sort of bandwidth you can get over your wireless connection. The higher the modulation, the better. The BSS color. Now this is quite interesting because if you've got multiple access points within inside a premise and you're quite close to it, so for instance, if you're roaming, if the signals are relatively the same on both access points, you'll actually flick from one access point to another. And what that can cause is instability in your wireless connectivity. So by putting up like a color code as such on there, it means that if you associate with an access point, and it gives you a color code and you're close to another access point and that's on a different color code, it means that you won't automatically switch over from one access point to another. So it'll maintain your connection to the one that you've connected to with the strongest signal, and that will provide you a color code. So it's a way of sort of isolating you to that access point and say that is the best access point for you. And as I say, it's really good to help improve the stability of the wireless connection. The target wake-up time. Now, this is actually pretty handy, especially when it comes to the new generations of mobiles. If, for instance, you buy a mobile, you'll notice over time the battery gets worse and worse where it's not maintaining its charge for long enough. So one of these things is the fact that it's always communicating to a wireless network. So what this does is it allows the actual device to go into like a hibernation mode and only transmit data as and when it requires it to. So again, being able to improve performance on battery life. So we've got a few real world improvements just to show you the difference between the sort of the previous standards. So the Wi-Fi 4, which is the 802.11n protocol, then you've got the AC, which is Wi-Fi 5, and now you've got the new Wireless 6, which is the 802.11ax. And as you can see, for the maximum theoretical speeds, going from N, which is 600 meg, to a massive jump to AC, which is 6.9 gigabits per second. And then again, another quite substantial jump to 9.6 gigabits per second. So as you can see, as we improve through the standards and technology improves, the chipsets improve that we're putting into our access points, the speeds increase as well. So again, being able to give you that higher level of network connectivity. So, and as you can see as well, the connection under the 2x2 antennas and the 4x4 antennas greatly improves as well. So on a technical standpoint, you'll see that the release dates for the different Wi-Fi's are quite consistent. So you'll see that the AX was actually released in 2019. It is key to know as well that when AX first came out and some vendors actually was publicizing they've got an AX access point, there's two different types of chipsets. So the first generation of AX didn't support the OFDMA functionality that I'm going to cover on the next slide, whereas the secondary chipset did. So if you think about it, we might have been a bit late releasing our product, but it's because we wanted to go straight for the secondary chipset and not the sort of firstly released chipset, because the noticeable improvements are only available with this later chipset. All these slides will be provided to you, so you'll be able to compare the technical improvements in your own time and sort of understand them in a little bit more. And if you do need any questions answering, there is a questions and answer section on this webinar as well. So as I've said, with Wi-Fi 6, OFDMA has been released. So the previous standard for the 802.11a, N, and AC was using OFDM. And you'll see each user is categorized by a specific color. And it basically means that's what timing zone they are in within the access point to receive the information. So if you've got, for instance, if user 1 being the red user is a poor signal, then user 0 is going to get their data much slower, and it's going to have a knock-on effect to everybody. So what they developed was the OFDMA, which is more of a cellular technology. So this is what they use for sort of 4G connections and things like that. It actually allows each timing mechanism to be split up. So you'll see how user 1 has got a first timing mechanism. However, on the second slot, it's actually been split between 4 users. So that means that the users connected to the access point can receive the data at the same time as other users based on their priority, based on the level of data that they're requesting. But it just means that they make more use of these resource units, which is in essence the packets, the data being transferred to the client. To put that in a bit more of a visual representation, so the current AC standard on the left-hand side of the screen shows a spacecraft being carried down a motorway. Now, anybody else who's requesting data is stuck behind this particular client, being the airship. So they have to wait for it to clear until they can get their information. However, with the 802.11ax, ultimately it allows you to bulk that out, have a bigger road so more data can go through it. So the cars, they get to the tunnel and they can be all fed their information at any one time. So it's a massive improvement in terms of how the data is actually transferred to the client and how quickly they can receive it. And ultimately, it allows you that smooth transitional experience and faster connections. So currently speaking, in our wireless AX product, we've got 5 currently out. So we've got the NWA11AX, which has a 1 gigabit LAN on the back of it and is statically fixed. So typically speaking, you'd mount these on a ceiling for both them and the 210AX. With the WAC 510D and the 610D, both of these are dual optimized. So this means they can actually be mounted on both the ceiling and the wall. And I've got a really good slide to show you the reasons behind this. One of the things that you will notice on the WAC 610D is they have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, as well as the 210AX. So this requires what's called a multi-gig switch, one that can do 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and up to 10 gig as well, which we'll go through later. The flagship product that we've got in our AX product is the WAC 650S. So this has smart antenna built in. So some of you that aren't aware what smart antenna is, I'll go through that again very soon and show you what that's made of. And that also has a 5 gigabit Ethernet port on the back of it as well as a 1 gig pass-through port as well, so you can plug a computer into it, for instance. All of our access points moving forward are going to be Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro, meaning that you can either run it in standalone mode with a controller like our USGs or our ATP ranges, or it can go into our Nebula cloud management platform. So let me just go through an understanding of the dual optimized antenna. So typically speaking, most access points you see will either be on the ceiling or on the wall. So when you mount them on the ceiling, it's not too bad because of how the radio pattern works. It'll beam it down and allow the best coverage possible. However, if you mount a static AP onto the wall, you'll see that it will actually cause interference with neighboring floors. So if you was to put one on floor 1, 2, and 3, you'll see that it actually has an overlap and will actually cause interference. Now, some vendors will try and do this by software, but ultimately that sacrifices performance and also increases the power output that's required for the AP. So what Zyxel do is they have got a physical switch that changes the radio pattern at a hardware level, not a software level. So when you actually activate this, it actually changes how the radio pattern's beamed out of the access point, and as you can see, it sort of squashes it out and amplifies it more on the floor that it's actually at, reducing any interference that can be caused when mounted on the wall. So again, it's key to know that if you are going to be mounting them in situations where, say, the school is looking to revamp all their Wi-Fi, but they haven't got data points everywhere, they've got them mounted on the walls and things like that, that is when you need to start looking for dual optimized antennas. Otherwise, potentially you could cause issues. I've recently been into a school where they've had it mounted on the wall. It was pretty much on an edge wall pointing out to the car park, and the coverage there wasn't very good because ultimately they wanted the coverage behind the access point, and because of the shielding and everything like that we put into it, it means that you do struggle with the wireless connection. So smart antenna. Now, smart antenna is a very good technology in how it works and how it improves your wireless connection overall. So how does it work? So technically speaking, any environment you install an access point has potentially some interference that can be caused locally to it. So for this one, we've got a microwave. So a microwave operates on 2.4 gigahertz. So if you're using 2.4 gigahertz on your wireless access point and you switch on a microwave, that is going to cause some interference. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be next to it, because the 2.4 gigahertz is overlapping, like it was on the previous slide I showed you. It's overlapping with the radio pattern. Everybody that's connected to it, regardless of where they are, is going to be affected. So what the smart antenna does, it actually calculates the radio pattern that's required to reduce its interference on a client-by-client basis. And this is calculated on over 700 optimized radio patterns within the smart antenna array. And it will actually guide the client with a specific radio pattern. And as you can see, it reduces the interference because each device has got its own radio pattern. The microwave isn't being able to interfere with that radio pattern because the smart antenna is adjusted to remove that element. And as the client moves around, it will then recalculate another radio pattern in case there's some other interference that it couldn't detect previously. And it takes less than 100 milliseconds to do this. So, I mean, I've seen this in action with our WAC6552D-S, which is a Wi-Fi AC access point. And what you will actually see is at some point your signal will go down a bar, and then it will recalculate, and then all of a sudden it'll jump back up to a full bar. And this is a way it actually reduces the interference. And seeing it in a live environment it's amazing how it works. Your latency is low, your speed's maintained, and nobody else is affected on it. I had myself and two of my resellers engineers all testing it at the same time, and it was just massively noticeable of how the improvements work with a smart antenna over a typical sort of Wave 2 product. So, as I say, this being said, with our wireless access points, because the improvements to the chipset and things like that, the power requirements can be much higher. And not only to offer the 9.6 gigabit theoretical speeds over the wireless, we need to start increasing the sort of the port speed on the back of it. So as I say, some of the access points come with 2.5 gigahertz or 2.5 gig ports or a 5 gig port. Now, on a PoE basis, and this is very important to understand, on a PoE basis, we have a 100 meter limitation in terms of what we can deliver PoE over. So you're looking at sort of Cat 5 on a 5 gigabit can do up to 100 meters, and then from a Cat 6, you can get 100 meters again on the 5 gig. But if you're trying to achieve that 10 gig limit, that 10 gig throughput, you need to start looking at the cables that you're using. So if you go into a building that's got Cat 5e, you won't be able to achieve 10 gig. On Cat 6, you'll be able to achieve it at about 55 meters. And for Cat 6a, you will be able to achieve it at the 100 meter limitation. So if you are doing any cabling works, I would always advise you go Cat 6a as a standard, because this future-proofs the network, meaning that you don't have to rip the cable out in about 3 or 4 years' time to allow this improvement, because cabling work can sometimes be more costly than the actual hardware itself, and even the on-site time needed to configure the stuff. So what we have done, we have released what's called a multi-gig switch. So this is our XS1930 series. Now, what multi-gig means is that over the 8 or the 10 ports, they can provide you the usual 100 meg and 1 gig, like most switches nowadays can do. But it also allows you to do the 2.5 gigahertz, 5 gig, and 10 gig on all the copper ports. Again, depending on the cable you use, Cat 6a is always required. Not only that, because of the size of the unit and things like that, we've been able to offer it a really sort of quiet cooling. So the fan speed, if you're installing them into schools or receptions, one thing that you don't want is a really loud switch, because it becomes very, very annoying for the people that sit there on a day-to-day basis. When you're mounting it in a cabinet, being able to visually see what's sort of going on with your switches, so knowing the status of them, being able to add a locator LED just in case you're trying to get an engineer to find the switch, and also knowing what the PoE being delivered to each port is. So the lights on the front will change color depending if it's on a 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, or a sort of 10 gig basis. So they're all identified on the front of it as well. One good thing that I do like about it is it has a PoE usage meter as well. So you can look at the front of the switch and you can see as a percentage, so like 25, 50% of your PoE budget is being used. So if you're going to add any more access points, you can easily see at the front of the switch whether or not you're going to run into any issues. We've also recently brought out like a restore button. So when you physically install it, you can actually create like a default custom configuration. So if for some reason somebody goes and resets the unit, or even if they make some changes that sort of stop something from working, you can go and get a pin, plug it into the restore button, and it will restore it based on what you've saved the default configuration as. Things like that are pretty good for, as I say, disaster recovery more than anything. So with our PoE version of the switch, so we've got a 10 port, which is non-PoE, and we've got a 12 HP, which is PoE. And this will offer 60 watt per port over the 8 ports that you've got, with a PoE budget of 375 watts. So typically speaking, most access points are around 30, 34 watts, maybe even 14 watts, depending what access point you're using. But for the top of the range wireless AX 650S, you require 60 watts PoE delivery for all the added AX features and the OFDMA and everything to work as it should do. And this is where this switch comes into its own, because allowing you that 60 watt per port is very important. And in regards to the uplink, so we offer like two 10 gigabit fiber uplinks on both switches, and then on the 12 HP we do offer two 10 gig combo ports as well, so being able to offer a 10 gig uplink to potentially your core switches. I'm not going to go through this too much, but understanding the competition. So as I say, all these slides will be provided to you, so you can do the comparison from Zyxel to some of our competitors in terms of what they do. I mean, some of the key features are all already highlighted for you, but the Zyxel XS1930-10, that has 8 multi-gig ports that can do every single variation of 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5, 5 gig, and 10 gig. Whereas the Netgear, that can only do 1 gig and 10 gig on their switch. So for our WAX 650S, you wouldn't be able to get that to work at a 5 gigabit because it doesn't support that. And the same with the D-Link as well. As I say, the multi-gig links, the 802.3BZ is a standard that is pushed down and what we need to adhere to in terms of that sense. Now we support that specific protocol, whereas the Netgear and the D-Links don't, and that's because they don't offer the 100 meg, the 2.5 gig, and the 5 gig across their switches. And one of the key things to obviously note is the fact that ours is a hybrid mode, so you can use it in both cloud and standalone mode. So when you come to the XS1930, again, a comparison against Ubiquiti this time and a Netgear one. And you'll see, as I say, in regards to the multi-gig ports, we can support 8 of the multi-gig standard ports, whereas like the Netgear can only do 2.5 on 6 of their ports, and Ubiquiti can only do it on 4. So you're actually able to do it over multiple ports, more ports in our switch than some of our competitors. And again, you've got the flexibility of it being a hybrid mode as well for both cloud and standalone. Again, everything on this will be provided to you after the webinar. So these are the SKUs. So these are the product codes for our access points going through the entire range. You can then get them in single packs and triple packs. And for the 510D, you can get that in a 5-pack and the 610D as well. It is key to know when you buy it. I have this quite often. When you buy it, make sure you're either getting a power adapter if required or not if you don't. Because ultimately, if you buy a triple pack, it goes on the assumption that you're going to be using it with a PoE switch. Therefore, no power adapter is required. So again, at the moment, the only multi-gig switches we've got that can offer sort of PoE to this nature is the XS1930. We have got plans to bring more out into the portfolio moving forward, and hopefully we're looking at a bigger multi-gig switch as well, which hopefully will sort of come out in the next year or so. So we will do webinars and communicate this as well from a marketing point of view to make sure that you know what products are available. And if you've got any technical requirements or any project-based business, myself or my colleague Nigel Canning, who's a sales engineer for Zyxel UK, we're more than happy to help you get on the phone and even do meetings with your end users as well, just to go through our portfolio and exactly what it can do as a full-on solution. So that pretty much concludes my Wi-Fi 6 overview, and also touching on the multi-gig switches that are required. So if you've got any questions, this is the time to do it. There should be a questions box on your screen, so feel free to post that on there. And while you guys are thinking of any particular questions, I'd just like to touch on a campaign that we are running at the minute. So this is an MSP campaign that we're doing at the moment. So this is for managed service providers, whereas you might be a reseller that offer the physical tin, for instance, but not only that, you offer them a service on top of that. So that'd be maintaining their network, making sure that everything's working, and providing proactive monitoring as well. So we've got everything you need to be able to do this, and this comes in form of our Nebula platform. So this is a cloud management platform where you can manage all of your networking needs. You can get reports, alerting, and everything that you need to manage a network. On top of being able to use that platform, we do offer some advantages for our MSPs. So you can get like upfront discounts on Nebula licensing of around 25%. You get gold ZAP discount as well. So our gold ZAP partner program provides you 9% discount on any SMB and cloud products. So that's pretty much anything that goes into Nebula. You get priority access to our pre-sales and post-sales support team, so the likes of myself and Nigel, to be able to offer you that specification in terms of being able to spec up the correct equipment, making sure you're buying everything you need to fulfill your client's requirements. And with any live technical training as well, you are eligible for a free Nebula product as well. You will see there is a little handout that you should be able to download. This will highlight the actual benefits of the ZAP program, the MSP ZAP program. And there's also a link on it. If you open it in a PDF reader at the bottom, you will be able to click on it. It'll take you to the website and allow you to fill in a contact form, which us in the UK here, we get myself and a chap called Dave Johnson will be in contact with you, and just to explain in a bit more detail what benefits you get and how everything actually works. And we are going to be running webinars on this as well in the near future. So again, make sure you download the handout, and if you've got any questions, then feel free to contact me. If you do need to contact me, you can get me either by my email address, which is daniel.marsh@zyxel.co.uk, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I'm on there pretty much all the time as well. So if you send me a message, I'll be pretty responsive on that as well. So I don't seem to have any questions come through. So that's either a good thing because I've relayed all the information correctly, or I've put a lot of you to sleep on a Thursday afternoon. So as I say, I'm always open to answer questions outside of the webinar, so feel free to get in touch with me. And I'd just like to thank you all for joining me today. So thank you ever so much, and have a good rest of your Thursday, and take care. Thank you very much.